Big Talk 10th Interactive Webinar. The Disruptive Innovation Festival is an online open access event that invites thought leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, businesses, designers to explore the question, the economy is changing, what do I need to know, experience, and do? Again, thank you for joining, and hopefully you're seeing the cover slide, the first slide of the presentation. The agenda today is a short presentation on the Nigerian context for the ethical circular economy. We're going to talk about the ethical circular economy workshop that we did in Nigeria, present some system maps, and then have a panel discussion on the circular economy context, circular economy for a developing country context. So with that, I'd like to first welcome, I'd like to make, I guess, some comments here regarding video. First of all, we're having video issues here in Arizona, so what you're seeing is the shared screen of the presentation. And then also you'll be seeing on video our team from Nigeria, who I will introduce in a second. And then we'll just walk through the presentation and have our panel discussion. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Femi Olarewaju. Jason, if you go to slide 2.
Yeah, thank you.
Femi?
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you so very much, Raj. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon from us here in Lagos. We're happy to be a part of this quite interesting time in what we call sustainable development for our part of the world. I am a co-founder of the Sustainability School Lagos, and I currently run as the director of most of the programs that we're a part of. I have with me here 3 members of the ethical circular economic program we run in Nigeria, and I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. I'll go to Fred first. Go ahead, Fred.
Thank you. My name is Fred Mogu. I'm a development practitioner, and I work with New Nigeria Foundation. I was part of the circular economy workshop program that was held in Nigeria last April, and I'm glad to be part of this. Thank you.
Next, we have with us our young engineer here, Miss Ayo Ayebajeje. She was also part of the program. Ayo, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Ayebajeje. I'm an electrical engineer. I attended the Ethical Circular Economy class, which held in Lagos, and was the team leader for Team Energy. After the class, I co-founded Ethical Sustainability Drive, which is a social enterprise aimed at educating youth on sustainability issues. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayo. And we also have with us Elizabeth. Elizabeth is with Sustainability School Lagos, and she was also part of the program, so she will introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Olaide. I'm an intern at Sustainability School Lagos, and I was a member, a team lead for food system at the just concluded Ethical Circular Economic Certificate Program in Lagos. I have background in economics from the University of Lagos, and it was a wonderful program learning about circular economy in April, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Raj?
Okay, Femi, thank you for that. I'm going to ask Ayo and Elizabeth to move a little closer to the microphone when we get into the panel discussion. They're a little hard to hear.
Their presentation, they'll move closer to the microphone.
Sounds good, perfect. I'd like to do a quick introduction of who's here in Tempe, Arizona, at Arizona State University. Myself, Rajesh Buch, and Dan O'Neill. We co-facilitated the workshop in Lagos with Femi back in April. Okay, so now we're just going to walk through the presentation. Jason, if you go to slide 3. Femi, so Femi's first going to talk about the opportunities for an ethical circular economy in the Nigerian context. Femi, you can take it away.
Thank you so much again, Raj. Again, it's such a great pleasure to be here. For purpose of better use of our bandwidth here, I'm going to turn the camera off. And I'm sure you're all seeing this slide. So the camera is going to go off now for this period. Thank you very much. Again, welcome everybody. Jason, can we look at the next slide, please? Now, this slide basically is just to set the a certain context in terms of what linear economy has meant to the developing parts of the world that we come from. And the general statement here is that developing parts of the world has never really benefited from linear economy, which is basically saying that from raw materials till we discard it, which is what the linear nature of those processes are, we have not benefited from it. So I'm going to use 3 key basic slides to discuss that. The slide we are currently looking at is talking about Human Development Index. Basically, even when you talk about Human Development Index, you're talking about life expectancy, you're talking about education, and you're talking about per capita income. So if you look at these areas, I hope you can see my cursor in the sub-Saharan part of Africa, this index is significantly low in those parts of the world. That's number one. Jason, can we have the next slide, please? Next slide. The second slide is talking about back to the S. Second slide is talking about energy consumption. Again, if you look at our part of the world, you can see that consumption is quite low in our part of the world. So, I mean, what does that mean? We produce a lot of hydrocarbons, yet the continent and the country is very dark, and that has direct effects on all aspects of production and economy. Next slide, please. If you also look at waste export from the more industrialized countries, especially of North America and Western Europe, you can see that, again, our part of the continent are the direct recipients of a lot of these waste exports. Now, examples of those, for example, for us are computer products, automobiles that have exceeded their end-of-life capacity in the more developed parts of the world, and they come here and start life anew. So let's go to the next slide. So with that background of saying that the linear economy has not done much for developing parts of the world, I will talk, my remaining presentation will be on just 3 key levels: the Nigeria's current state, ethical circular economy in China, and then Lagos as pilot city for ethical circular economy. Next slide, please. So briefly about Nigeria. For Nigeria, which is a member of OPEC, there's a heavy focus on fossil fuels, which we're talking about oil and gas here. There are very weak drivers of resource development, meaning that key drivers that include institutions, governance, and infrastructure. Number 3, value capturing, therefore, has been a struggle due to very poor fiscal policy and insufficient local content development, meaning that from a local context, we have not been able to build the adequate type of capacity that will allow us to drive all these initiatives. And finally, the country has not been able to use the windfall from resource to drive long-term development. Next slide, please. So in terms of linear economy, in particular reference to Nigeria, I'm repeating again and referring to the first generalized slides that I showed earlier on, that Nigeria has not benefited from linear economy. Number 1, we have extremely poor manufacturing base, meaning that we do import quite a significant, over 95% of our consumables. A country that is also very rich in hydrocarbon resource, well, has not derived any major advantage from the extraction of this raw material. If you look at per capita income, it's very low, which again is quite typical of resource-driven economies. Number three, there are large quantities of waste that are brought in from the developing countries. I mentioned those earlier on to include second-hand cars and computers. Then number four, we have significantly poor capacity, human infrastructure and institution. Now, a major catalyst for this, what is making this a very, very urgent situation that requires very urgent attention, is the rapid population growth. Nigeria, as at 2013, is growing at about 2.8%. So if we are 200 million people right now, we're tracking about 440 million people by the year 2050. You can compare that to the growth in the same year in the United States of America, which is only 0.7%, and that is single digit. Now, the single digit growth is consistent in the global north countries of the world, but if you look at the global south countries, you'll see double digit growth going on. Next slide, please. Now, if we bring it even closer home, we bring it to Lagos, which is where we're speaking from, and which was the basic case study for our circular economy initiative. Population of Lagos is about 20 million people, covers about 3,577 square kilometers. Now, I mentioned earlier on that the country is growing at about 2.8%, but Lagos is actually growing between 6 to 8%, almost double the rate of growth of the country. Waste generation is between 11 to 12,000 metric tons per day. In Nigeria, the vehicular density is 15 vehicles per kilometer. That's the average across the country. But if you look at Lagos, density is about 280 vehicles per kilometers. And these things has direct consequences. If you give me the next slide, Jason. So the direct consequences is these social challenges that are already prevalent in the country, but particularly escalated in Lagos due to very, very high population explosion. So things like economic and social disparity, because most of the people that migrate into Lagos receives about 1,600 people per day. Most over 80 to 90% of people that migrate into Lagos actually go into poor areas, like all these Makoko, Maroko areas. So there's an escalation of disparity in social amenities. There's water scarcity. Sanitation is a major challenge. Then the slum is now expanding because most of the people that come into Lagos are in need of habitation, and most of them go into these slum areas. So it is not surprising that the slum is growing into the lagoon in the case of Lagos Island, and then there's acute air pollution and energy shortages. Next slide, please. So what am I saying here in essence? What I'm saying here is that circular economy being what it is, which is an economic paradigm that one can use or can use to drive sustainable development. But for the context of where we are as an entity, implementing circular economy as a sustainable development paradigm must mean that it delivers solutions to the challenges that we are facing. And I'll take that one again because I think this is the core of where we are in our part of the world. Regardless of what we define or consider circular economy to be, as a paradigm is supposed to provide for sustainable development or assist in achieving the goals of sustainable development. And for us, we cannot achieve any form of sustainable development if we don't take care of the challenges that are quite inherent in our own environment. And those are the things I talked about earlier on, which is economic disparity, slums, water scarcity, energy shortages, air pollution, and rapid urbanization and congestion issues. So yes, ECE for us then is a major tool that will represent solutions to our challenges, or must represent solutions to our challenges. And to look at it in context, we looked into China. If I can have the next slide, please. So we looked into a proof of concept that was carried out in the city of Guiyang, which is a small city in China. Now, as part of China's 5-year development plan, they identified the economical use of resources as the country's national policy. And basically, to me, I interpreted that to say that they are going to take circular economy and use it to solve real and present sustainability challenges that they face. And some of those challenges are things like resource problems, like severe shortages in aggregate and capital resources, and the demand for resource consumption. Environmental issues like desertification, wastewater discharge, clean and safe water, smoke, sulfur dioxide, etc. And also national security, which basically is the energy trilemma of security, equity, and environmental sustainability. So looking at that from that perspective, so we are saying now that the beginning of trying to deeply understand what ethical circular economy will mean in our context is to actually find ways through collaborations and knowledge sharing and partnerships to find ways on how we can define those areas of circular economy that would influence or have positive effect in terms of changing the dynamics of the challenges that we face. And we thought that Lagos, next slide please. And we thought that Lagos as a pilot city for circular economy, similar to what they did in Guiyang in China, will be what we should be considering. And what does that mean? That means that we're talking about trying to be part of a comprehensive sustainability transmission plan that will create a roadmap of a sustainable and vibrant resilient city that will address known challenges, the challenges that we've talked about earlier on, that will emphasize environmental resilience, transformational social entrepreneurship, and of course, the circular economy. And to achieve all this, we also thought that the Sustainability School, with its collaboration with Arizona State University, will play a major role as a knowledge center and the magnet for long-term sustainability education and entrepreneurship training. Again, that is significant because, again, most of the challenges that we face is that we are not able to retain knowledge in our society. So that means that we are believing that Sustainability School will play a key role in knowledge retention. Next slide, please. So what do we expect to be, what would a CE circular economy pioneering Lagos represent? Well, an urban infrastructure that guarantees circulation of materials, efficient use of energy, and integration of clean production. And what does that mean? Well, it has to incorporate building of recycling systems to help improve waste collection and recycling performance. This is very key in a city like Lagos, again, with its 12,000 metric tons of waste. Also, building of innovation centers that will drive activities for mitigating the effects of digital waste. That came in full force when the founder of Facebook visited Nigeria about a month and a half ago, because we have a technology center here in Lagos. I mean, his presence was a major boost to what the possibilities are in this part of the world, both from the supply and the demand perspective, because there's heavy demand for digital equipment, but then we have to have a plan on how we're going to get rid of the waste that results from these inflows. Again, we also have to talk about building clean energy systems. We have to talk about building a clean mass transit system. Again, I'll re-emphasize the significant role of the knowledge center, which what SSL is in conversation with at the moment with both our local and international partners in Arizona State University. So basically that gives you an overview of what we hope to be able to achieve and what we have been trying to make happen in the last 2.5 years. And now I will pass it on again to Raj to talk briefly about what we did with the circular economy program in Nigeria and what we hope to do going forward. Raj?
Thank you very much, Femi. So maybe just laid out the context for circular economy in the developing world country context, and I'm going to walk through the ethical circular economy workshop that we ran in Nigeria in April. So the first slide, I'm going to ask Dan O'Neill to comment on.
Hi, this is Dan O'Neill. I have the Global Sustainability Solutions Services and Rob and Melanie Walton Sustainability Solutions Initiatives at ASU. I just want to make the note and give some kudos to the Ray C. Anderson Foundation, who provided the grant funding to develop this course and to deliver it once internationally and once here locally. And of course, Ray Anderson is well known in the manufacturing world as being one of the visionaries for net zero, net positive enterprise and circular economy kinds of applications. He was on the board of ASU Global Institute of Sustainability up until his death, and left a foundation that provides grants for these kinds of activities. And we just want to say thank you to the foundation for supporting this effort.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So I want to talk about the workshop itself. We combined various tools and frameworks in this workshop, as you can see on the screen. Systems thinking and systems mapping is a fundamental approach to looking at sustainability challenges. Circular economy and principles and methods that have been outlined by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We applied those in this workshop. Transformational Sustainability Research is participatory visioning, essentially, and solutions development. That is research that's being done at Arizona State University. The ethical aspect of our circular economy work is based on the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll talk about that more in this presentation. And then we use the net positive impact assessment, or the net positive framework, for doing an assessment against those SDGs, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So in this workshop, we had 35 professionals participating from these organizations you see on the screen there, New Nigeria Foundation, Center for Public Policy Alternatives, and the Lagos State Government. Some of these participants are with us today. The thematic groups that we worked on during the workshop, the 8 areas we worked on, as you can see: built environment, sanitation, transportation, food systems, water, energy, electronics, and plastics. We'll talk about a couple of those today. The workshops, as I said, use the Transformational Sustainability Research approach. On day 1, we started with value principles and visioning and defining what the current system looks like today. On the second day, we then had the participants look at what a circular economy might look like for their thematic areas and start thinking about solutions. What kind of solutions can bridge the gap from the current system to that circular system? On the third day, there was a little bit of transition planning we talked about. And then we did a net positive analysis that ties to the Sustainable Development Goals. So as I mentioned, how would you measure, if you were to practically and operationally define sustainability as a world in which 10 billion people are living well on a planet within its capacity by 2050, how would you measure those 10 billion people living well? Well, our approach is to base it on the Sustainable Development Goals. If these goals can be advanced and achieved by a point in the future, then essentially sustainability has been advanced or achieved. Here's some pictures of the different working groups that we had in the workshop in Lagos. Go ahead, Jason. I'm going to ask Dan O'Neill to comment on the net positive impact assessment, or the net positive assessment we did against the Sustainable Development Goals.
So as Raj mentioned, we used an approach where we envisioned a future, talked about a current system, which we will go over in just a little bit, and then proposed a future system in each of these 8 theme areas. And for each of those theme areas, the teams did a mapping of impact at a very high level, very straightforward exercise, about a half an hour exercise where they map their initiative and the changes from a linear to circular system in terms of impact against the Sustainable Development Goals. The one you're seeing on the screen right now is the food system. It's one of the 8. They were all very similar in identifying what goal was impacted, whether it was a positive, negative impact, and what the mechanism was that caused that impact. So each of the teams did this so that they related the new systems and the system transformation to advancing sustainability as a framework, net positive measurement against the Sustainable Development Goals.
Next slide.
So these are some of the outcomes of the deliverables of the workshop. One thing that was really exciting is there was a tremendous amount of knowledge about Lagos and Nigeria in the workshop, and they were able to really document thought leadership by thematic area in Lagos and in Nigeria, based on all of their tremendous experience in doing development in Nigeria. We came up with key solution ideas for each of the theme areas. We identified research questions, and we wrote a research paper, or really a workshop output paper that includes systems thinking and research questions, those kinds of things that we're in the process now of publishing. We also did a survey and analysis of the survey of the class that we could use to improve for future course delivery, and we really together created a group of local change agents that had some knowledge about circular economy and how to apply it in an ethical way against the Sustainable Development Goals in Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So with that, I'm going to end my portion of the presentation. We completed in April the first in the world executive certificate in an ethical circular economy. And so now with that context as background, the Nigerian context, and what we did in the workshop, I'm going to ask Fred and Ayo to take it over and present their team's work on sanitation and energy. Fred?
Thank you very much, Raj.
Go ahead, Jeff.
My team, during the workshop, during the program in Lagos, worked on sanitation. We looked at the present sanitation system, and we also looked at the circular economy system. In the present sanitation system, you have basically the sources of waste from the industry, residents, hospitals, agricultural waste, and we from the workshop, we found out that the situation, the condition now is such that every trash from these sources are treated as waste, which is not supposed to be so. And we also saw that waste is not sorted at source, and so it gives a whole lot of challenges in management. In the current system, you have institutions engaged in in the regulation of waste in Lagos State, and indeed some part of the country based on that location. We have, for Lagos, you have Loma as an institution and other institutions. Then we also saw that in the current system for waste, you have there are illegal dump sites all over the city, and of course, these have far-reaching public health consequences. And in the current system also, you have a situation where the official landfills are not developed as they are in the advanced world. So these are all the issues that make the current system very complicated and not solution driven. And so with that, we came up with a circular system that is supposed to drive the new system. And in it, next slide, please.
Yeah.
So we say that should be our envisioned circular sanitation system. In the circular system, we are envisaging that waste will be sorted from source, right from, recall I had talked about the sources of waste earlier. So right from the residences, waste will be sorted as it is elsewhere. Industrial waste, agricultural, the hospitals. And the new system will also maximize the reuse and recycling of waste, rather than the current system that models up the process. And of course, this is going to create a whole lot of ban for a value chain that will accommodate other sectors and individuals. Now, the envisioned sanitation system will not have provision for unauthorized dump sites. The system will cancel out the dump sites and, of course, taking away the health challenges that come with that. And like I said, there will be a full chain of a full value chain coming out from the envisioned sanitation. What I mean there is that from what Dr. Lariwaju said earlier, 12,000 metric tons is generated every day in Lagos, and 50 to 60% of these 12,000 metric tons are actually biodegradable. So if the biodegradable is worked on, and you would have a whole lot of value chain. There will be fertilizer, there will be gas for energy, there will be huge employment. And of course, we're going to have a system where the scavenging system is institutionalized, rather than this the system that everyone just goes in, they do not have any form of identification, and they expose themselves to real health challenges. So with institutionalizing the scavenging practice, this will create jobs, yes. Then we will have it as a career, and we will have it as a business with clear business models. So those are the things that we should be seeing in the new sanitation system. And then, of course, the institutions of government will be really focused on what they ought to be doing at the time, like LOMA, which is the Lagos Waste Management Authority. And of course, the new system is going to bring in private entrepreneurs, which is very critical. And government cannot do everything, and so waste is a place where private individuals can come in to make do business and generate revenue. And these are the things in the current, in the envisioned sanitation system. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and as I call on Ayo to take on the next theme.
Thank you. We're already talking about the current energy system in Nigeria. Now for electricity, we have energy being sourced from hydro, coal, and gas. Now this energy, which is produced, is sent into a centralized grid, which is transmitted and distributed to the energy users. For cooking, we use gas, kerosene, and firewood. Now, there are challenges with this current energy system. For example, first, we have a large percentage of the energy being sourced from fossil fuels. And these fossil fuels, we know, have massive pollution and health impacts, especially when they are used for cooking. Now you have obsolete technology being used for transmission and distribution. Therefore, you have about 70% of the energy being lost in the process of transmission and distribution, so that only about 30% of the energy produced reaches the energy users. And then we even have inadequate infrastructure, which is not enough to cater for the energy demand of the citizens. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. In the Envision energy system, which was designed during the workshop using the circular economy model, we're saying that primarily renewable energy sources will be used. Nigeria has a lot of natural resources that can be harnessed to make up for the energy shortage in the system. So if we use sources like solar and wind, we can make up for the energy shortages. We're also saying that in this efficient energy system, the transmission and the distribution infrastructure will be upgraded. Also, we're going to be preventing illegal connections to the grid to ensure safe and reliable connection. Another suggestion of ours is that the energy users themselves need to be educated on the types of energy and how their choices affect the climate and their environment and even their health. We're also saying that energy users need to be properly metered so that the companies, the electricity companies can generate enough revenue to invest. Another suggestion of ours is that we need to use carbon capture and storage to mitigate the effects of climate change. Thank you. Raj?
Okay, thank you, Femi, Fred, and Ayo. So with that as background for our panel discussion, I'm going to start off the panel discussion with a question to Femi, Fred, and Ayo, and bring in Elizabeth as well to talk about food systems and her perspective on food systems. The first question I'll throw out at the four of you there in Lagos is, can you provide 2 to 3 examples of solutions for each of your systems that can help the transition to an ethical circular economy? Femi? Are you muted, Femi? We can't hear you. Femi?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, go ahead. Did you get the question?
Yes, I got the question.
Okay.
I wanted 2 to 3 examples of solution for each of the systems that can help transition.
Yes. And you can, Femi, you can turn off your video if you'd like, just to make sure the connection is clear.
Okay, so I'll turn off the video. Okay.
Thank you.
Better?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead, Fred.
Okay, and again, I'm up here, Fred. In the circular economy that we have envisaged for Nigeria, a number of solutions, yes, do exist for that will help to transition the ECE, the ethical circular economy. And right from April, when this program was held, we had a system where we looked at from energy, from waste management, for instance, transition from the current system already has embedded in it processes that has helped. For instance, we do not have to go back to begin to look at what has been done before. So we have solutions that have been looked at from the developed world, which can help to transit in the Nigerian context.
Yeah, and to just say a little bit more about that. For example, the idea of being first of all being able to work together, it's the highest level and the critical beginning for what we are talking about here. Infrastructure, for example, we lack the infrastructure to take advantage of the massive waste that we generate. And what kind of infrastructure am I talking about? The idea of being able to get energy from the vast gas that is trapped in our very huge dumping sites is an example of a solution from an infrastructure perspective that we need. Education is what we are already working on. If you look at what Ayo is doing with our organization that she set up after the ECE certificate program that is designed to go into secondary schools and actually introduce students to circular economy before they can even make decisions to go into universities, hoping that such introductions will influence their thinking of their choice of courses that they will take at the university. I don't know if I want to say more about that.
Yes, it's necessary for us to begin to create awareness. There's a big knowledge gap between youth and sustainability issues, so we need to start educating our youth right from their young age, so that we don't keep repeating the same cycles of generations that do not have adequate knowledge on sustainability issues. And we need to educating these youths on sustainability issues will help us to transform from a knowledge-based economy to a solution-driven economy. Thank you.
Right.
Elizabeth, can you comment on, we haven't talked much about the food system, but obviously food system has challenges to delivering nutritional and sufficient food to the citizens of Lagos. Can you talk a little bit about the food system and solutions?
All right. During the ethical circular economic class in April, we came up with solutions for Nigeria food system, from the normal linear system to a circular system. And we said there are different opportunities that exist within the Nigerian food system. The first thing we need to take into account is taking global farming practices and defining it in the local context of agriculture and farming in Nigeria. We talk about creating compost and fertilizers from solid waste and animal waste. We talk about making energy, renewable energy from waste. We talk about technology and machinery, improving the machinery and technology, of farming and of farmers in Nigeria that can actually help boost production. Another thing is we talk about is refrigerated trucks that can actually help, curtail food waste, because about 90% of food in Nigeria they get spoiled before they get to the market. So we're talking about having refrigerated vans for vegetables and for perishable goods like tomatoes, like meat, and so on. Another thing is having biodegradable plastics for packaging and preservation of food in Nigeria that can reduce food waste. Another thing is updated transport system and improving local food production via small-scale farming. Those are the kind of opportunities for the circular economic system in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. What I just see, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, and we are looking at the question, we're looking at a situation where we are saying that solutions exist from a circular economy perspective and SDG perspective that can impact people and environment globally. Now, since this SDG, 17 SDG, are global in nature, I don't know if Raj or Dan, you want to speak to a global north context or a global north example of how SDG, on how these things are impacting solutions to the people. Because in our own context, we know, for example, SDG 13, which talks about consumption, for example. No, I'm sorry, SDG 12, which talks about responsible consumption and production. It's when you look at sustainable consumption and production, it is easy for us to see what it can mean in the entire value chain of activities, from power to transportation to what Elizabeth has just described in terms of food systems. All what together talks about waste. We can see how these things can really how the desire to achieve SDG goals can actually help us in taking care of all these problems. So my question then is, what are some specific examples that you can tell us about that we can learn from? Because our own problems are really very clear. Are there some specific examples of SDGs perspective that we can learn from a global north context? Raj?
Dan?
Well, you know, an interesting thing about the Sustainable Development Goals is that they were really intended a little bit differently than the Millennium Development Goals that preceded them. The Millennium Development Goals were largely focused on the lower income developing countries. The SDGs are really meant for the whole world. And so they're being broadly looked at by corporations and governments and NGOs here in the United States and Europe as guideposts for the work they do. And the corporations in particular are going to great lengths to look at how to map their efforts directly to them. We've spent a fair amount of time looking at a couple of them. Just as one example, you know, we've looked pretty deeply into the education goal and our SDG, which is basically universal education for all. That breaks down into each of these goals have about 10 targets. One of the key targets in there is a measure of involvement in tertiary education across the population. Those goals are fairly aggressive, and when you look at them on a national basis and a global basis, they're pretty daunting when you look at the number of college graduates we'd like to produce between now and 2030 or between now and 2050, and you have to resort to other than current methods of brick and mortar kinds of approaches in order to achieve those. So online education, which isn't exactly a circular model but has a lot of the same implications, are something that's you know, that is something that is a mechanism to be able to get a lot more graduates for the set of resources that you invest in them. So that's an example. The whole world kind of resolves down to a couple of major ones, which is sustainable cities and communities and responsible production and consumption, because it's in those two areas where our patterns of production and consumption really guarantee that we're going to get ourselves in a lot of trouble if we don't change their fundamental patterns. And of course, that's what the circular economy is all about and what circular cities are all about. So specifically focusing on how we use circular economy to approach circular cities and production and consumption, and responsible production and consumption are two that are high on both government and corporate lists of things that they want to concentrate on here in the developed world.
Another example to build on Dan's comments regarding education is to use the internet and use the global network, if you will, to deliver better agriculture and better food systems into developing countries and emerging economies. Same thing goes for health systems, delivering health care remotely. So these are all things that companies and entrepreneurs are working on. But if that can be institutionalized and formalized and scaled, then those will help accelerate transitions to circular economies in the developing country context without having to build, buildings in brick and mortar. Okay, Femi, any thoughts from the panel over there regarding SDGs and the Nigerian context?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to take that. This is Fred here. SDGs in the Nigerian context. Earlier on, we mentioned that 50–60% of waste generated are biodegradable, basically from food waste, agricultural production, and this constitutes a huge problem. So if you work on 60% of 12,000 metric tons of waste generated every day, you'll be taking a whole lot of action on climate change. Of course, you know that the biodegradable component of this waste will generally end up in unauthorized dump sites and even the authorized government landfills. These items will decompose and then form gas, particularly methane, and these are, if not properly captured, will constitute another hazard. So if circular economy addresses this, this is excellent on the SDG 13, which is climate action. And it will directly relate to Goal 7, clean energy. The same gas generated from the biodegradables are, of course, better than energy from carbon. So that will serve as clean energy. And of course, Dr. Lariwaju had talked about Goal 12, which is the responsible consumption and production. Circular economy also will deal directly with, we are looking, if you look at zero hunger, so it can address circular economy as we were taught and as we have come to be exposed to it and accepted the knowledge, can address zero hunger. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll quickly say one thing about Goal 17, which I think we don't say enough about, which is partnership for all the goals and partnerships, period. Again, one of the biggest challenges we face is capacity gap, institutional capacity, infrastructure capacity, even access to funding, to the major challenges. So for us in our part of the world to begin to even deal with these issues, the idea of partnerships across goals and partnerships, local partnership, international partnership, especially to have the type of collective processes in place that will allow us to build that type of capacity to drive solutions to these challenges, even to drive the achievement of the sustainable development goals. It's a major requirement for our part of it.
Okay. Femi, thanks for that. Fred, thanks for that. I'd like to throw a question out from the audience over to you folks in Lagos. Joanne asks, have you looked at what would be the impact on employment if an ethical circular economy is implemented in Lagos?
Yeah, yes, this is Fred. Excellent. We just talked about the enormous value chain that can arise from the full implementation of a circular economy in Nigeria. We talked about value chain in terms of converting waste to fertilizer, value chain in terms of converting waste to energy, to structured business and institutionalized scavenging. This gives and takes business into the hands of the ordinary people, which is actually the most affected in terms of the unemployment rate in Nigeria. Those with low education, those with middle education. So this can actually promote massive employment for this set of people. And energy My colleague here, Ayo, spoke about energy, and circular economy is giving the ethical circular economy in Nigeria is giving a picture of energy availability. And if there's energy, there's employment for the barber down the road, there's employment for those who are in one skill or the other. And indeed, the transportation system and the food system that Elizabeth talked about earlier. Yes, it will have massive impact on employment in Nigeria.
And if I can just add a little bit to that, basically circular economy, in this context, ethical circular economy, is just saying that we have to start doing things differently. And that the different way with which we have to start doing things, we don't necessarily have existing capacity for them. So that means that we have been asked to learn new things. We have been learned to learn new things in our agricultural system. We have been learned to learn new things in our energy system. We've been learned to have to learn new things in our transportation system. Those will require new infrastructure. Those will require new knowledge from education and training perspective. And without that, those will also ginger or catalyze new things that will require new capacities, and of course would enable people to train themselves in new things and produce more workforce for the country, as a matter of fact.
Okay,
the question that will always remain is, how well can we put the required scale to this for it to begin to have the required effect on development?
Thank you, Femi. Thank you, Fred. We're running out of time, so before I wrap up here, I'm going to ask Ayo and Elizabeth to throw any final comments they might have with respect to the systems they looked at, anything with employment, any related comments they want to add.
Yeah. I want to say that the idea of ethical circular economy is actually to influence behavior change. So it's necessary for us to create awareness and educate the citizens on becoming more responsible consumers of energy and other systems. They need to understand the effects of their choices and the types of and generally the kind of choices that they have. And they also need to know that they have the power to actually drive transition to an ethical circular economy. And this is what sustainability score is set to do. Thank you.
Femi, can you turn the video on? And Elizabeth, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I want to say that it will be a very, very great opportunity for Nigeria to embrace circular economy, especially in the food sector. Why am I saying it? Because we have about 13 million people that are actually hungry in Nigeria. And if you look at the rate at which we produce food, we don't produce much of our food. We import most of them. And then $750 billion get lost every year in Nigeria from food waste. If we have 13 million people that are hungry, and then we have about 750 billion loss in food, I think there's a very huge gap that circular economy can help us fill. If we can fill into circular economy, it's really going to help solve some major challenges in Nigeria. That's what I have to say.
And for me, my final comment will be that I am most grateful and particularly Ray C. Anderson for supporting this, and you have disrupted my mindset prior to this program.
Oh, they've frozen on us. That video's live. Okay.
From the Lagos Sustainability School, Lagos, as they get empowered to reach us in Lagos and in Nigeria in the development practice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Femi, Fred, Ayo, Elizabeth in Lagos. Thank you, Dan, here in Arizona at ASU. I'd like to wrap this up. We've run out of time today. I'd like to wrap this up by basically saying that in the developed country context in Europe and in the US, we've been heavily focusing on private sector supply chain circular economy work. in the developing world. I think the takeaway from this session is that the ethical circular economy provides a context for a collaborative platform for public-private partnerships to deliver the kind of solutions that the developing countries need to deliver to respond to social and environmental challenges. And with that, thank you very much for attending this DIF Big Top 10 event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.